Well, thank you to Mayor Taylor and to Dr. Schlissel, President Schlissel, to joining us. We are here today, obviously, to talk about the upcoming fall semester, as students are intending to return in about 10 days, classes starting in about 2 weeks. So we'd love to just ask a few questions about what that is going to look like, what kind of community safety measures the city will take, and what the university is planning to do in the upcoming weeks and months. So first question I have for you is, how are the university and the city collaborating for students' return?
Sure, of course. So thanks, McKenna. And maybe I'll go first, Mayor Taylor, and then I'll turn things over to you. But, the bigger picture, McKenna, is, we've been trying throughout the pandemic to maintain as much of the mission of the university as possible. And, as you know, we do research, we do education, we have a healthcare system, we do all other types of service. And to the extent that we can do so while maintaining good health and safety, that's what we're trying to do. So as we look at the fall semester ahead, we're trying to provide the best education possible for our students in the context of a pandemic, recognizing that everything we're doing as a society, not just at the university, comes along with risk. So, for us, we'd like the risk of having our students attend this public health informed hybrid semester end up with the city of Ann Arbor a similar level of risk as if we were fully remote in our education. And as you know, and the mayor probably knows, many of our students come to Ann Arbor and stay in Ann Arbor regardless of whether they're attending class in person. So last spring when we had to go fully remote, many students stayed in town. There have been students through the summer, many are back in town already. So we're aiming for a level of risk that's similar to what would occur if there weren't any in-person classes at all. And about 70% of our classes for undergrads are actually going to be online. 70% of our credit hours will be fully online. So it's a very different, it's not a usual semester. If you've got an image in your mind of what a regular semester is like, this is pretty different. We've actually encouraged our students and their families, if our students are concerned about their health, we've got plenty of offerings online, and we encourage them to stay home and study remotely if that's what they'd wish to do. And for most all of our curricula, they can make very good progress to graduation and not disrupt their overall plans and their overall ambition by taking online the kind of courses that we can offer that way. We're not offering any large courses in person, nothing over 50 people will be in person. And the kind of classes that you could really only do well in person, like lab courses or studio courses or music instruction courses or art instruction courses, those are the ones we're going to do in person. So we don't know yet how many students will be physically present in Ann Arbor. We're preparing for quite a large number, but we wanted to have the students feel a sense of responsibility, but also to know if they do come back, they're going to have to be responsible and accountable for their actions to make sure they and their fellow students and then all the folks we share the city with maintain a basic level of health. And I live in Ann Arbor. I live right on State Street, although you can't get there on South U. You can't get there now because the road's all torn up. But
I prefer being fixed, Dr. Schlissel.
It's being fixed. Forgive me. It's being upgraded with great utility work and the like, as well as repaving and all. So it will be nice. But we go to the supermarket. People are out on Main Street wearing masks, and on the weekends, our restaurants have set up shop on closed roads. People are getting together with friends. They're wearing masks. They're maintaining social distance. All of those things have a degree of risk to them, but I think the risk is minimal if people follow distance guidelines, crowds stay low in number, density stays low, outdoor is safer than indoor. And that's the way we're thinking about the semester. If we can follow these public health guidelines, we can safely deliver the kind of education that has to be done in person, and then protect our friends, our neighbors, our faculty and staff, and our students during the course of the semester. So that's sort of the big idea. And
I guess I'd like to go in on that a little bit as well. I mean, the University of Michigan and the and the city of Ann Arbor are obviously, we have separate missions, separate functions, separate operations, but naturally too, we've collaborated from the beginning. We are in a constant state of collaboration over areas of mutual interest, and the safety of students, the safety of everyone in the Ann Arbor community, permanent, longtime residents, and folks that showed up yesterday. That's an issue of common concern. And so, in the course of the pandemic, we at the city have been communicating with the university. We, of course, communicate with the leaders at County Public Health. And we just want to make sure that we are in line and we understand our common goals, our common expectations, our common modes and means of communication, education, and encouraged compliance. And as the public health hybrid informed semester rolls into greater clarity, that collaboration is accelerating. So we are talking even more and more as we're getting closer to people coming on campus with coming to Ann Arbor with a greater sense of immediacy and urgency. And so, we have been talking, and we're gonna continue to do that, obviously through opening day and beyond.
Yep, and we do have working groups that have been working quite closely. As the mayor said, we work closely regularly, but I'd say our level of intensity of working closely has increased. And we are concerned. We're concerned about our students when they're off campus, when they're living in their rental apartments, or whether they're living in larger groups, as many of our students tend to do. We have to have a coordinated way to assure that they're following the guidelines. The governor has laid out guidelines, the university has. We have established something that we're calling the Wolverine culture of care. It's really a behavioral pledge that we're asking the students to make, but we've temporarily modified our student statement of rights and responsibilities to basically say that the students are responsible for living up to these public health directions. And if they don't do so, they're subject to all the modes of discipline that we have for other violations of our student codes of conduct. We hope that it doesn't come to that. We don't plan to enforce our way to good behavior. We're really trying to educate our way to good behavior. We also have developed and continue to take advantage of close relationships with the major landlords around town, the leaders of Greek life, the faculty and sorority leaders, the leaders of other student groups like the marching band, where the kids live together in a number of houses in town and enjoy themselves. Our student life people have everyone's phone number of all the leaders on speed dial. And when we get reports of people, really not taking seriously enough the guidelines around the size of groups and the wearing of masks and other behavioral issues, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call up the leaders of these organizations and say, hey, look, we have to work together. If you want to stay here and have a productive semester, you've promised, and we're going to hold you to that promise of certain levels of behavior. We also have our Department of Public Safety and Security cooperating very closely with the Ann Arbor Police Department. So we have a common set of procedures, and we don't begin with public safety officers showing up. That's sort of a very last thing we would do. But we want to do so in a coordinated fashion so that everybody understands responsibilities and accountability.
Right, and you actually kind of stole my next question right out of me, because I was going to ask how you all plan to enforce these social distancing mandates for things like masks and for social gatherings. I'm sure that there is concern that students will love to see each other again when you come back for welcome week or beyond. So what might that look like if there are, concerns of parties or other situations like that?
Yeah, so we are working closely. The governor currently has a lid of 100 people as being the largest number of folks that can convene. But we're actually working with the county and cooperating with the city in trying to get that limit lowered to a much more reasonable number. You could have fun with 25 friends. You don't need to have fun with 100 friends. And the larger the number of people, the harder it is for good behavior to be intact. But the leaders of the groups are responsible for the behaviors of the groups. And we know who the leaders are. And the other thing we're doing is we've started an ambassadors program where students, but also faculty and staff are trained on what the responsibilities are for our community. And they are members of our various student groups, they're student employees, and then their staff and other friends of the university that will basically just remind people, say, hey, wear your mask. And if met with a lack of cooperation, then they'll contact folks on campus or folks in the city, and we'll send that message again a different way. And eventually, we think a very high fraction of students, it'll never be 100%, will comply. We also want to be reasonable about this, because you could imagine, let's say you've got 3 or 4 people who are roommates, and they're with each other all the time in a living circumstance. It's their own bubble. If they want to play ping pong on the front lawn, and there are 3 or 4 of them, and they're living together inside a home anyway, that doesn't make me particularly nervous. If 30 of their friends come over and everybody's drinking and partying and nobody's wearing a mask, then that does make me very nervous. So, we want to be smart and judicious in how we approach this sort of cultural change. And I'm cautiously optimistic. In walking through town, certainly in the last few weeks, I see a much higher fraction of people actually wearing masks. And although I still do come upon groups of people, and probably too large a group with people in them not wearing masks, by and large, the behavior has gotten better, and we're going to keep pushing on it and educating around it and messaging it, and working with the city, who has their own program to actually enforce the kind of public health informed behavior that our neighbors in the town have to, whether they're affiliated with the university or not, have to comply with. And I'm very nervous for the sake of our businesses and stores and restaurants. One of the quality of life things in Ann Arbor are all the wonderful things there are to do. And if disease runs out of control in our city and our state, we'll end up going backwards like it was back in March and April, where everything was on lockdown. And you think of all the businesses that suffered tremendously, the people who become unemployed, the incomes that are at risk. We really have to take this seriously together for everybody's sake.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. And I think I'd also like to emphasize something President Schlissel said, that reliance on DPS or PD is really the very last of the last resort. We are expecting and anticipating an increase in accelerated communication campaign, increase in accelerated education, and frankly, increased accelerated normative expectation that people simply will need to wear masks. Students are part of the Ann Arbor community, whether they're here on day one or they're winding down to the tail end of their 8th semester. They're part of our community. They're part of our city, and we have a kindness communication campaign running from the city side. In coordination, there's a Maize and Blue and A2 communication campaign, each of which emphasize the truly very simple, but also very effective means to reduce the spread of the virus. Social distancing, masks, hand hygiene, and so forth. People hear these messages again and again and again. And the students who are coming here fresh will start to hear them, and they'll continue to hear them. They will, I think, gain the full understanding from community leaders, from student leaders, and from the larger institutions, university and city, that compliance is an expectation. Compliance is frankly the right thing to do for themselves and their fellow Ann Arborites.
And so with all that in mind, do you think it's safe to send students and faculty back to action in person? And what would happen if there was a large outbreak, one that was scaled higher than expected?
Sure. So as you can imagine, it definitely is a risk. It's a risk, and I'm quite sure there will be people that contract COVID-19. There are right now during a non-semester. One of the things that allows us to move forward is the rate of the incidence of COVID-19 in Washtenaw and in Ann Arbor is quite low. We monitor daily reports of testing and positive tests. We'll have a dashboard that we're going to put up on our website that will be a public-facing dashboard that'll share information about the status of COVID-19 all around the state in the cities of our 3 campuses, Ann Arbor, Flint, and Dearborn. And then on our campus, how many tests are we doing? How many are positive? How many people are in quarantine or isolation? We've set aside 600 beds from our dormitory stock for people that will need to be isolated or quarantined in case they've had an exposure that indicates that they might become infected. We'll do surveillance testing during the course of the semester to look for changes in the frequency of the virus in our community. And I can tell you that if the rate of infection increases at an unacceptable rate, or if we have evidence that it's spreading from person to person in a dormitory or in a class setting or in an off-campus house, eventually we'll get to a point where we'll pull back and we'll say, look, it's really not safe. We haven't been able to live up to our commitments to these public health interventions like masks and small groups and distancing and hand washing. And then we would have to go fully remote. So we will continuously reevaluate the status of the pandemic in Ann Arbor, on the campus and around the state. And then the capacity of our university health service, our occupational health and safety folks, and our health system, to care for people that become infected. The only way to take infections down to 0 is to go back to a lockdown or to have a vaccine. So the lockdown, I think, has shown that it works, but it has devastating economic and other consequences. People have an urge to be at least a little bit social, and the more you fight that urge, the more people show bad behavior, trying to rebellion against it. So we just have to strike the balance, but monitor things along the way and pull back if it turns out that the disease is spreading and we're not living up to our standards. We've also arranged the semester, McKenna, to end before Thanksgiving. We don't want people traveling back and forth a lot, taking the risk that's here in Ann Arbor, which is low, and then going somewhere else and bringing back. So folks will go home the weekend before Thanksgiving, and then they won't come back. The rest of the semester will be online. Their exams will be online. So we have that as an option to help us. We've gotten rid of the fall break. If you know or remember, there used to be a 4-day weekend in the middle of the semester in October, I believe. Just to let people take a deep breath and go off and do something fun. But that travel in and out of town is not a very good thing, and we're anxious to get the in-person part done as early in the calendar as we can. Flu season's coming up. We'd love to get most of our instruction done before influenza is a problem. We're encouraging all of our students and community to get vaccinated, and I hope Ann Arbor does the same thing with its population, because flu and COVID-19 have such overlapping symptoms that it'd be very hard for people to sort out one disease or another, and everybody would have to get tested, whether they have just a regular old flu or whether they might have COVID-19. So just to simplify things and make everyone safer. So we're doing a number of things of that type. And
to add to that, with respect to how is the semester going to go, how are the next few months in Ann Arbor going to go? I think in the end, the institutions, the university, the city, county health, we're going to have rules and guidelines in place that are designed for the purpose. At some point, it's up to all of us as individuals to do our part. We can have all the rules in the world, have all the guidance in the world, but if people don't take an individual responsibility to support the collective, to act in a manner in their individual best interest and in the best interest of the community, there will be there'll be stumbles and an increase in infection. It's really all our individual responsibility to be safe for ourselves, to be safe for our neighbors, and I think it's important that we, and I think we will, emphasize to long-term residents and short-term residents that we're in it together, and that we all have to take it seriously and do our part.
Okay. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I've just got one question for you both. How do you expect the football season and the delay of the football season to affect both the city and the university?
To me, it's disappointing that we won't be able to have football in Ann Arbor. It's so much a part of our culture and life, and people look forward to it. It's also a huge economic driver for the city when people come to town and use our hotels and our restaurants, and they'll do other aspects of entertainment. It's just part of who we are, and it's unfortunate, but it was necessary by the fact that people come to games from all over the region, all over the country. And many parts of our country, the pandemic is very poorly controlled, and there's some parts of our state that are not doing as well as other parts. So it really is a public health challenge. We're anxious to be able to develop methods that allow us to do as much of normal life and as much of our culture as possible. We just aren't there yet in our understanding of the disease and our ability to prevent it in a contact sport, to have football and to have people come to Ann Arbor to watch.
Yeah, from the city's perspective, the community perspective, obviously, University of Michigan sports, up and down the line, football, football perhaps leading. Those are important, incredibly important economic drivers for the community. They're incredibly important cultural elements of the community. They're part of what makes it great to live in Ann Arbor. And their absence this year, it'll be costly. It'll be costly economically. It'll be costly socially and culturally. But I am, not a participant in the decision, fully support it. In the end, we have to err on the side of safety, and that's we're certainly making, or the decision makers in this area certainly drove the choice, because putting forward a University of Michigan football season, a college football season here, just simply isn't practical and feasible if our goal is to maintain public health.